everybody. I'm Bill Sanders, and this is WatchArtSci, the art and science of watch collection. Today, I got a lot of stuff to cover, including an unboxing I think you're going to enjoy. Now, the first thing I want to talk about are looking at some different watches, and this group of watches I want to take a look at. And I want to ask yourself, what do they have in common? Let's take a look. Here we have one by Fabergé with a peacock on it. Here we have another one by Fabergé, which is a very unusual watch for, it's a traveler's watch with dual time zones on it. Here's a watch by Hermes, and they have down at the bottom you can see a little retrograde that keeps the date. Here you have another one by Hermes, and this one is got a lot of subdials, dual time, and it's even got a moon phase on it. Here's an unusual looking watch, that Opus 9. This watch is a Harry Winston watch. And here we have another one by Van Cleef and Arpels. Okay, well, yeah, they're interesting watches, and I wish we had more time to look at them all more. But so what? Well, first of all, they've all won grand prizes, the Grand Prix de Horologie de Genève. Okay, that's one thing. And second of all, they were all designed by the same person, a man, a watchmaker extraordinaire named Jean-Marc Wiedereck. And chances are you've never heard of him, okay? Nor of his company, which is called Agenhor. Now, they make the movements, and they make some of the very best movements in the world for a number of companies. And when you go through the winners of the Grand Prix, his name keeps coming up again and again. Excuse me. Well, okay. So what? Right? Well, major talent. Okay, we talked about some of the watches I've owned by F.P. Journe, and F.P. Journe is one of the best. We've talked about Dufour, let's see, who else? Roger Smith, all of these tip-top watch designers, and they have either decent size or no, or relatively small companies. For example, I think Roger Smith only produces like 10 watches a year. However, this guy, Jean-Marc Wiedereck, doesn't make any, okay, in his brand. There's no Jean-Marc Wiedereck brand. They're all made by his company, which is an independent watchmaker. Not an independent watch company, but an independent, well, we'll call it a movement maker. So, well, what about you and me? Can we afford something like this? Well, if you look at the prices of the watches that he makes, they're maybe, I think an inexpensive one is like $50,000, but they're typically $100,000 and north of that. And his watches are incredible. The movements are very creative. One of the things you may have noticed, a number of the watches were women's watches. Well, he likes designing women's watches because he says that the complications are more challenging. So after looking at that Hermes with all of the different complications, oh, well, that's nothing, I guess. So anyway, here's an interesting guy that, well, we can't afford, or maybe we can. Okay. So that's one thing, and the question I'm sort of bringing up, is it the case that sometimes the best movement isn't your in-house movement, but rather a movement made by an independent. Beside Agenhor, Vasseur makes these excellent movements. So that's one of the things. And we talked about this before. Here's my Vacheron Constantin. It has a Girard-Perregaux movement. And I've discussed that at length in terms of like, well, okay. So there are times when the in-house of the manufacture movement may not be the very best. It's possible, okay? And I think Vasseur and certainly Agenhor are two examples of that. Okay, that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about. The second thing is, well, something that I stumbled upon, and this is a retrograde. And so I got some examples of a retrograde, and I looked at the thing, and here you have this little stick. It goes up and then down and up and down, and it's usually used with off to the side. It's used with days of the week or days of the month, or even I suppose they could have a second time of the hours. But anyway, it's an interesting movement, and the reason I got interested in it was that I was reading about some of the things that Jean-Marc Wiederdrecht had done in Agenhor, and the term retrograde kept coming up. So I thought, well, I better find out about retrograde. Well, it turns out that a lot of watch companies make watches with retrograde. Some of them are very inexpensive, like this Graf Zeppelin. Others are right up there, like the Robert Devoy watch with a retrograde. Longines, Mont Blanc, Maurice Lacroix. There are a lot of them that have retrograde. So I figured, well, let's see if we can explain how a retrograde works in a watch. Because now I know how when a gear changes and it gets another gear and it moves the minute hand or the second hand or the hour hand. But how do you get something that goes like this and then back down to it? Okay, well, I'm going to stop here for a second and we're going to take a look at another diagram of that. What I've got here is had a toothpicks, not toothpicks, but popsicle sticks and cardboard. I tried to make a simulation of the way a retrograde works. This is supposed to be what's called a snail cam. And essentially what the snail cam does is as it turns like this, and there'll be a gear underneath it run by the movement gear, you can see how the little thing runs. Now, this one isn't a very good one. And then it goes up like this, and then it keeps pressure against this. And then you got to have it done a little better than I have. But when it comes to the point when the gear turns, when it gets to this point, it pops in like that, and then it goes around again. Making a snail cam was a little bit of a challenge, but you get the idea of how they work. And just imagine a gear under here turning it, and then how this would turn. And again, the snail cam has to be shaped just right so that as this moves, the hand moves, the retrograde hand moves, but it goes something like this. Anyhow, so much for my my do-it-yourself kit. But anyway, just hoping it'll give you an idea of what retrograde is and how it works. Now, if you go to, there are a lot of places that you can find online some really good animations of this, and this is just the basic simple concept. Well, as you can see with our little demonstration, first of all, I'm no artist. I'm certainly not a watchmaker, but the whole idea of how the the lever works with the Snail Cam and goes around and moves the stick up and then pops back when it's finished. I thought it was pretty cool. Okay, so that's one thing. That's one of the ways that Retrograde works. Okay, now here's what was on my mind. How do I find a watch, a really good watch? Because the watches I have in my collection, I want to have some of the best I can get, okay? But I can't afford everything, okay? None of us can, I don't think. But I can afford, a halfway decent watch. We'll say somewhere around a medium to low price Rolex price. I keep saving up for a Rolex and blow it on something else. I'm worthless with that, okay? Now, so I thought, well, let me see. So I looked and I looked and I looked. And I found something that was really very cool. And so now let's have an unboxing and take a look at it. This unboxing represents the end of a long string of negotiations. This is the watch that I really wanted after looking at a lot of different kinds of things. And so let's see what we got here. While I'm doing this, let me tell you this story. I had had a negotiation all worked out, and had the price settled and everything. And the person selling it was overseas, and he and I had very different ways that we had in mind for concluding the deal. And the long story short, boy, good sized box here. And okay, big mess. The sort of, like I said, I started to say a long story short, was that we couldn't agree on a payment and shipping. I wanted to go through Chrono 24 and the way Chrono 24 does it. You pay them and the person shipping it ships to you. And that way, if you don't get what you're supposed to get, then they don't pay the guy or the gal. And so let's see what we got here. HW. This is probably a brand of watch that you may have heard of the company, but not in terms of watches. So let's see what we got here. And it comes in a nice shiny box. And it's a Harry Winston. There's the paperwork. We'll take a look at that in a bit. Let's see what the watch looks like. Oh, it's heavy down there. I guess there's some more stuff. Okay. Open this up. And there it is. Whoa, manly old man. That is a pretty watch. Oh boy, it's a very pretty watch. And it looks like it's wound. Yeah, it's all wound. It's now, if you can see it, keep an eye on the left there. Now watch what happens. See, it popped right back, and it went back to zero. This is a by retrograde, a Harry Winston Premier X Center by retrograde, and it's got a. Let me take it off of the pillow here. And let me take my other watch off so that I can put this one on. And let's see what we got here. This one is, I believe it's either pink or yellow gold. I'm not positive. It's one or the other. And you can see the back there for a second. I'll be showing you some other pictures soon. And this is the front. Now, the retrogrades are on both sides. The second retrograde every 30 seconds it pops back. And so it's a very busy little operation that it's going through. The way that retrograde works. Okay. It goes to the bottom and it pops right back. On the right side, it is on the days of the week. So it starts off with Sunday and then pops all the way back to Monday. And we're on Tuesday now, as you can see. And the time is about 1:25, which seems about right. Okay, so let's take a look at the watch, and I'll be right back. Now, as I pointed out, my experience with the purchase overseas didn't work out. Let me say this about it, though, is that the guy who was selling it seemed like a nice guy. And after I told him, I said, hey, look, I can't do it unless we go through Chrono 24. And he said, well, that was only for dealers. He couldn't do it. So, that's okay. I didn't have the sense that the guy was pulling anything shady. But he really seemed to be very casual about it. Okay, like, hey, when you get the watch, I tell you what, wire me the money and then send a courier over to my place of business and you can pick it up, and the courier will pick it up. Wait a minute, Oh, and by the way, too, I'd pay for the shipping. And he said, well, that's what it's done. It wasn't done with any kind of anything other than, well, I guess that's the way you do it, more than anything else. Okay, well, that's neither here nor there. We left on or parted, I should say, on good terms. So then when I was looking around, is that I've talked before about authorized dealers, and ADs are, they're like anything else. Some of them are great, and some of them are, what would I deal with them for? Well, the one I ran into is incredible. He is a Harry Winston AD in Englewood, New Jersey, and the name of the company is the Timepiece Collection, and they have an online store, and of course they have this very nice mortar and bricks store as well. I tell you, the difference between how they treated me and how the other guy, he didn't mistreat me. It just sort of like, more, didn't do a whole lot. They accommodated me in very good ways. They gave me a wonderful deal on the watch. I mean, extremely good deal. This watch, when I got it, I said, it looks brand new. This is, are you sure this is a previously owned watch? I think they had it down as in mint condition. Well, I've seen that, and things aren't so mint. This thing didn't look mint. It looked brand new, condition zero. And it turned out there was a guy who has got like a multi-million-dollar watch collection whose initials happen to be HW, Harry Winston. And so he wanted a watch with Harry Winston. He put it in his collection, but he liked wearing something else as Patex, and I don't know what else was in the collection. So he just had it there. So then he thought, we saw another one he liked by Harry Winston, so he figured he didn't need two HWs. So he took the one out of his collection and said, here, I want to trade it in on this other one. And so I got it. I couldn't believe it. The other thing he did, and this is a good dealership, he delayed sending it a day because he took it to his watchmaker and made sure everything was working just right with a time grapher, everything else. I put it on my time grapher as soon as I got it here, and it's the timing on it was unbelievable. Okay, now you saw how the retrograde works on this thing. And this is a bi-retrograde, which means it has a retrograde on both sides. And also, too, another thing that I liked about it was this design. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see. I'll put it up there. It has those little posts on the top, or little like pillars. Well, what they're from is the Harry Winston, New York boutique. It has that arc in it, so they have it on they put it on their watches. I don't know why I liked it, but I do. And all right, now here's the other thing. We talked about independent watchmakers, and the retrograde movement was by Jean-Marc Wiederrecht. So I ended up with the movement is a Girard-Perregaux 3306. I think it's 3306 or 3106, one of the two. But the module for the retrograde is Jean-Marc Wiederrecht. So it was able to get a watch by a designer who I didn't think there was any chance in the world I'd ever be able to afford something like that. But the research I did found it out. And so there it was. There was both of them together. So I have the Girard-Perregaux movement. It's an excellent movement. And then I have the module by Agenhor, by Jean-Marc Wiederrecht. And the first two people that Harry Winston hired to do their movement, one was Wiederrecht and the other one was Roger Dubuis. So it's an interesting kind of watch. Later on, Harry Winston started this Opus series, and the first guy who had watches in the Opus series was F.P. Zorn. And so there were these watches, and I look at it, and one of them was my Chronomet Resonance. So anyway, it was very fun. It was sort of a fun discovery. Now, if you know anything about Harry Winston, you don't think of watches, you think of high fashion jewelry. But instead of becoming a designer watch, like a number of them out there, they just slap their name on and logo on a watch, and some of them look pretty nice, but they're really not anything with high horology. Harry Winston started with the very best, and I guess not a lot of people knew about it. Last year, Harry Winston was purchased for, I think it was close to $1 billion by Swatch. And I was in the Harry Winston boutique in New York City, as you saw. And the guy there said, well, now all of them are going to be Blancpain. And Blancpain, as you may or may not know, sort of absorbed Frederic Piguet. So anyhow, that's how I ended up with my retrograde, and I ended up with a watch by one of the best designers in the world. I'd like to hear your comments. Always love to hear them. You're more than welcome to subscribe. This is an invitation, and if you'd like to subscribe, like I said, you're more than welcome. But comments are the most important thing. To me, WatchArtSci is a discussion place, a place where we can talk about watches. I don't think we ever scream about watches, and I hope we never do, but we can sure have a lot of fun talking about them. All right, this is Bill Sanders for WatchArtSci. We'll see you on Sunday for our next collection review. This is outside of Harry Winston. I've been looking at Harry Winston watch. It's called a bi-retrograde with a Girard-Perregaux movement and an Agenhor module in it. So anyway, we're going to go in and see what we can find out.